Enough is enough. Wendy Rogers. Well, I tell you, Wendy, it's about time we had you on. I've talked to folks that have wanted to come on here for some time, and I'd like to. I've heard folks, and I've had some emails this week that have praised you, and some that have talked about you being John McCain-like, and I think that scares a lot of us. So I'm going to let you set the record straight tonight. I hope we get some good callers. What are you going to do to fix Washington, D.C.?
Well, it's an honor, Senator, to be on your show. I've known you for a long time. We are both East Valley residents. I've lived here. My husband's in the studio. We decided to retire here from the Air Force, both of us. I own a business.
Yeah, tell a little bit about your career in the Air Force.
I was privileged to be one of the first 100 women pilots in the Air Force. My husband is also a retired Air Force officer, engineer, electrical engineer. I'm a fifth-generation career military officer. My father was commissioned into the United States Army as a West Point graduate on D-Day, 1944. He was in combat just a few short months later, fought in the Battle of the Bulge, was wounded, awarded the Bronze Star, lost many men, fought all the way past into Eastern Europe, parts of it that we gave up, lost men on the last day of the war. And I'll tell you why I'm running for Congress. I made him a promise, and I keep my promises. And I decided 2 years ago to run for District 9 because this is my home. This is where we've lived and raised our children. And I told my father, I said, Dad, this is Wendy. I'm your only daughter. I'm talking to you now. I know you may not be able to hear me, but I'm going to run for Congress, and I'm going to honor you and our family's legacy of service to this country. And I will honor you in everything that I do, and I will fight with every fiber in my body to get this country back. And then he died that night. So this became a very personal run for me. And we go back, as I say, 5 generations. My great-great-grandfather was left for dead on the Civil War battlefield in the Union Army, and a man saved his life whose name was Harry Lovejoy. And my great-great-grandfather said, I'm going to name my firstborn after you, Harry Lovejoy Rogers. And my father was Harry Lovejoy Rogers III. So I am the daughter, the granddaughter, the great-granddaughter of Army officers. Our son was a Marine officer, so he represents the 6th generation in our family to serve this country. And I will tell you that we have a real problem in Congress because we have a lack of representation of those of us who've served in uniform. Right now, only 19% of Congress has served its country in uniform. Back in 1960, 80% of Congress served in uniform. You have a Congress that doesn't understand what that means. And I will be happy to talk about the VA. I will be happy, and I don't call him a defector, by the way. I call Bergdahl a deserter. And everything I've read along my military channels supports that. So I'm happy to talk to those issues. I have a background in mental health. I was a clinical social worker in the Air Force for 3 years before I went to pilot training. So I have a very in-depth understanding of how the hospital system works for the military. So I'm happy to address those issues because I do have expertise along those lines, and that's the kind of expertise I will bring to bear on problems in Congress.
Well, really, and we need some hard fighting. You know, it's one thing to run for office, and, you know, I realize you're one of 435 in the House. It's a small percentage, but, you know, there are times where one vote makes a difference. You speak English today instead of German because of one vote. Many things happen as a slim margin of one vote. It can make a difference. One of the things, and by the way, you've got this experience of mental health, and let's don't be analyzing me and exposing anything on air that you find. My wife is another one that I never let on the air because she knows things that nobody else should know, and I'm not going to allow her to tell the world. The truth is, I'm like you. I'm very lucky. I'm married to a wonderful lady, have wonderful children, and beautiful, beautiful grandchildren, and for them, we have an obligation to be vigilant in the defense of the freedoms we enjoy. We're overtaxed, we're overregulated, the government has exceeded way beyond its enumerated powers. And I know you understand the founders. I'm a great student of the Founding Fathers. I love reading about the real George Washington, the real Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Prince, the Old South Church in Boston, that miracle that occurred there. Thomas Paine, Patrick Henry, one of my heroes. Just we have. And I look at those patriots, and I look what they did, and I look when they signed that Declaration of Independence, what they were willing to die, gave their life up, committed their life, their fortune, and their sacred honor. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people who love this republic, that'll serve and recognize the limited responsibility the government has over our lives. The limited. Folks, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with Wendy Rogers, candidate for Congressional District 9, 602-508-0960. Call in, ask Wendy anything you think you want to hear about from your congressional candidate. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks, folks. We got a caller on the line, and I want to go there. But just before we take you, Lynn, I want to remind people. I want to remind people again about our veterans who have served, and I want to personally thank Wendy Rogers and her husband for their service. I am so grateful for those who, again, we've got a volunteer army, a volunteer military. They volunteer to serve. They are defenders. They are warriors, in effect. And once a protector, almost always a protector. And I'm grateful for those young men and women who serve our country vigilantly. And I'm more than upset when we talked about Bergdahl and what he did and the lives that were lost because of his leaving his post, running off to find the Taliban, who was responsible for thousands and thousands and thousands of deaths. Well, I tell you, if it doesn't make you mad, folks, I don't know what will. And if you're not mad, then you ain't listening to what's going on in America today. We got a lot of good things, but it's about time we take this republic back. Lynn, are you there with us?
Yes, Senator Pearce. Great show as usual, and Wendy, thanks for being a guest. I believe I'm in your district, and I'll just try to condense this as much as I can, and I'd like to get your take on a few issues. Number one, I remember what the great Republican President Dwight D. Eisenhower said when he said, "Beware of the military-industrial complex." Okay, I believe follow the money trail. The military-industrial complex gives the Republican and Democratic Party and individual candidates, including the president, a lot of money to make sure we continue to invade and occupy foreign countries where we've got no business, just so the military-industrial complex can increase their mega profits. I say we should have never gone to Vietnam. We should have never gone to Iraq. We should have never gone to Afghanistan. It's all a money thing. I got a big problem with it. And my father, fought in World War II. He was a Marine. So I come from a military family and all my relatives. The other issue, and I'd like your comment on that, the other issue I have is health care. I believe the United States may be the only major country in the world that allows the health care corporations to operate for profit, okay? The border, okay? Now, I've got some liberal tendencies. I believe drugs should be decriminalized, but I'm very conservative on certain issues. The border. remember what the great President Dwight D. Eisenhower, remember Operation W-Back? You know what I'm talking about, Russell?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
We do indeed, 1953.
Right on. That's why I think he was one of the reasons why I think he was one of the greatest presidents. He warned us about the military-industrial complex, and he did Operation W-Back, where he deported all the illegal aliens that invaded our country.
Well, actually, just to correct you on that, he created that program, W-Back.
Well, can we say it? Can we say what it is?
Absolutely. It was the name of he named it. It's not us calling names. That's the name of the operation.
Right. But can we spell it out for him?
Yes.
Okay, it was called Operation Wetback.
Yes, it was.
Okay, go ahead, Will.
And then it wasn't a derogatory. It wasn't meant to be derogatory. It was a term that was pretty commonly used back then.
Well, sure, they came across the Rio Grande
But anyway,
River.
what people have to understand, we didn't have the ability to transport or communicate like we do today. Nothing compared to what we had today. And in spite of that, because of that operation and their vigilance, 80% of the 1.4 million people that left the United States left voluntarily with that operation. He didn't deport them all. They left voluntarily because the threat of enforcement. It's just like today, and I want Wendy to jump in here, but I just want to remind people, like today, when we passed employer sanctions SB 1070, according to the Arizona Republic, who's never seen an illegal alien they didn't like, 100,000 to 150,000 voluntarily left the state. That was their numbers. According to the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association, the largest law enforcement association in the state of Arizona, they put out a press release in September of 2011, said because of SB 1070, they were experiencing a 30-year low in crime. And they admitted, they said it's only because of SB 1070. And since then, we've identified the property crimes are down 46%, auto theft down 47%, homicides in the city of Phoenix had declined 50%. Wow. Nobody in the media talks about that. And that was simply the threat of enforcement, similar to what Dwight D. Eisenhower did. When you know you mean what you say, you're going to do.
Right.
And they know the threat of arrest is there, they leave.
And then Reagan comes along with his amnesty program. The 14th Amendment, Russell and Wendy, I think was interpreted wrong.
Oh, we know
it
was.
was about black slaves. I think all these anchor babies, they should be rounded up and deported along with their parents.
It absolutely is wrong. The first 140 years of that law, it never applied to illegals. You got to remember, when that was written in 1866, there were no illegals. It was not illegal to come to this country. There were still conditions of citizenship, but there was nothing.
But Christian cinema.
Right. Well, Senator Howard on the floor in passing the Civil Rights Amendment, which followed with the 14th Amendment when they modeled it after the Civil Rights Amendment, same year, same Congress, he said this has nothing to do with aliens or those in the country illegally. He made that statement right on the floor.
And Russell,
so we know that.
Russell, and I want to ask you and Wendy, what do you think about the ATF with their Waco and their Operation Fast and Furious? And I know for a fact that they're continuing to do that garbage here in Arizona.
Well, and I don't know that for a fact, but I have information too on that. Let Wendy jump in here because you've asked some pretty good questions, and I want Wendy to answer. Because trust me, I could talk all night long about three of the subjects you brought up. Especially, I'm going to do a whole show on the 14th Amendment because it's about educating people and understand. And just real quickly, on the 14th Amendment, to show that it has nothing to do with your GPS location. After they passed the 14th Amendment, again, you got to remember how it came about. The Civil Rights Amendment came about by a Republican Congress after the Dred Scott decision, which demeaned the African American folks almost as if they were not wholly, real people, real humans. The Republicans stepped to the plate, said enough is enough. They passed the Civil Rights Amendment. And then they said, let's do it a step farther. Let's make it a constitutional amendment. That's the 14th Amendment. And you're right. It's the legacy of the African Americans. It was to fix a terrible wrong and injustice applied to them. As the Republicans did it, it was vetoed by a Democrat president. They brought it back to the floor and passed it with a Republican Congress again and put it in as a constitutional amendment. And everybody wants to forget that history. After they passed the 14th Amendment, the Indians were not recognized as citizens because they lived on a reservation and belonged to a tribe and had to do with a jurisdiction and allegiance. That's what it had to do with. They had to pass three congressional acts to recognize the Indians as citizens. So you're right. Nothing to do with your GPS location. And we've kind of consumed this, but you can hang on. You're listening. I'm going to have Wendy answer these things when we come back from break. I want her to answer all three of those areas that were good questions. And I get kind of carried away when people bring up information that I know is so misunderstood and have such a significant impact on America. 602-508-0960, folks. Stay with us. I'm going to give Wendy Rogers the mic when we come back to talk about those things and see how she feels in her comments. Thank you. Hang on. Okay, folks, we're back. You remember, 602-508-0960. Wendy may have to leave a little early for another commitment, so if you want to talk to Wendy, you bet to call in. Wendy, some pretty tough questions were asked by Lynn. A couple of them very intriguing to me on where do you stand, the border situation, the rule of law, immigration, the military complex that he talked about. Share your thoughts with us.
Okay, let's start with the military-industrial complex. First of all, that was a very insightful statement made by Dwight Eisenhower at the end of his presidency. And as a student of history and a 20-year career officer, I'm acutely aware of that situation, plus my husband was in research and development of new weapon systems. There are two fundamental issues here at stake. Number one, force structure. And number two, taking care of the personnel. We have to have a force structure to be able to counter the threats to our national security around the world. When our force structure is reduced to pre-World War II levels, that worries me. Why would that happen, you ask? We talked about it off air. You have a Congress that's comprised now of only 19% veterans, whereas back in 1960, when Dwight Eisenhower gave way to John F. Kennedy, 80% of Congress was comprised of veterans. I submit to you that until we get more veterans in Congress, will we be able to deliberate most meaningfully and knowledgeably about what the force structure is that is required. Because right now we are woefully, inadequately manned force structure-wise. Let's talk now about the other component, personnel. We make a commitment to somebody, a woman or a man, who comes into the military in terms of how we train, equip, and pay that individual. Because as you said, we are an all-volunteer force. If we do not live up to that commitment to train, equip, and pay that individual what we promised, then we've got a problem. If we leave someone behind on the battlefield, as we have done to veterans here at the Phoenix VA, we have broken a sacred promise. And at the end of the day, someone who serves in the line of fire is there because of the guy or gal next to him fighting with him or her. There is a promise, there is a bond among a band of brothers, if you will, to protect each other's back and serve the greater good, which is the mission. You suborn yourself to the greater good. It becomes about the team, not about the individual. And so if your country does not honor the promise to train, equip, pay, and take care of you the way they said they were going to, you have violated the promise. And so I come back to those two fundamental things, the force structure and how we care for our personnel, both while they're on active duty and afterward. I served half my career overseas. I was one of the first 100 women pilots in the Air Force. I have flown all over the world. I've seen third world countries, developing countries, to compare to the United States. I was deployed for 6 months to run the Bosnian airlift in 1994. I've seen a lot. But I will tell you that if someone is injured in uniform in the line of duty overseas, he or she is given the utmost in medical care, then why do we have people dying, waiting for appointments at the VA? In my very congressional District 9, you have Congresswoman Kyrsten Sinema not even responding to the urgency of that situation until it was politically expedient for her to do so. I called for the resignation of Director Sharon Hellman at the beginning. I called for the resignation of General Shinseki 4 weeks before anybody else did. You are relieved of command if people are not cared for under your watch and you have broken the sacred promise. So that's the answer to the military question, and I'm happy to answer the others when we come back.
Right, and we're going to go to break here, and I appreciate that, Wendy. And nobody knows the military much better than you, but one of the great signs of a nation is how they retreat their military when they return from battle. Couldn't agree more with you. The sacred duty it is. We'll come back here in just a minute, 602-508-0960. We got some calls. We'll get right to you as soon as we get back, but I want Wendy to answer a couple of questions. Thank you. Hi, folks. Hey, thanks for staying with us. We have some callers on the line, but I want Wendy to just take real short, because I want to get to our callers, comment on the rule of law and secure border. We've been lied to by Congress for so many years. John McCain built the darn fence only during the campaign. Once he was elected, he forgot that statement again. Jeff Flake, he's through with comprehensive immigration reform, amnesty. He's gotten the message, won't do it again. As soon as he's elected, he's part of the Gang of Eight, with the most dangerous bill ever conceived in Congress. It was actually the pathway to citizenship for terrorists and gang members, the way it was written. Anyway, Wendy.
I look at the border, Russell, from a military officer's point of view. I have also a master's degree in national security studies. What keeps me awake at night is the lack of political will to enforce border security. You have not only the South American or Central American family trying to get a better life, but you have nefarious people coming across who want to do us harm, who are slipping through on a daily basis. You have Border Patrol who cannot come up to the border to guard our country. You have farmers ranchers who have everyday people trampling on their land. You cannot have immigration reform until you secure the border.
Well, hang on. I'm going to hold you right there, because that worries me when you even say cannot have immigration reform. Would you support any form of amnesty at all?
No.
Any form?
No. Amnesty is not on the table.
Well, that's what immigration reform is about. It's the only reason to talk about it. Our immigration laws aren't broken. Congress is broken. Our politicians are broken. We know what happens when somebody's willing to enforce law. Just the threat of enforcement, we know what the results are. Less crime, less cost. Mesa can close 13 elementary schools because of those that have left, declining enrollment, and yet we continue to ignore the big elephant in the room is the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association. So that's it. But not to catch you, but I do want to get these questions answered by these folks. And then we're going to get back to it, because anybody that uses, you secure the border first, and use that term, and Sheriff Joe agrees with me, you have to worry about it, because that's just the code word for as soon as we can convince you we've done something okay on the border, then amnesty is to follow.
I want to see security existing, not promised, and that's a difference.
But
because
even then, you'll never secure the border when you have free medical, free health care, free education, free stuff, and allow people to cross that border without enforcement. You'll never secure the border as long as you have rewards for those who break our laws.
And we must enforce the law. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah,
we are a nation of laws, and as a parent, it is the way you raise children is to follow through. Sure, you don't say, I'm going to discipline you at the count of 3. You discipline somebody right away.
And you love your children, but you discipline when they break rules.
That's because structure is respected.
Yes, it
and
is.
until we follow through on the structure of enforcing the law, and I was...
without apology.
Absolutely.
Good. Joe, we have Joe on the line, and we're going to jump right to you guys and get you in here. Thanks for hanging on.
Is that me?
That is you, sir.
Well, I got an announcement for the American people out there. How do you like paying your income taxes? How do you like knowing that the veterans get shoddy help? How do you like knowing that your money is going to put these illegals at $253 a day in the best help they've ever had, giving them medicine, giving them medical supplies from your tax money? How do you feel about that, what your government does? It makes you feel like you don't want to pay your taxes. But if you don't pay your taxes, the government goes after you. So that's what our government does with our money. Nothing. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're preaching to the choir, Joe. President Obama wants to give $1.4 billion. Did I get that right? Billion to handle this situation that he has created with a porous border, with immigrants being dumped in Arizona, when my fellow brethren in uniform who've served in uniform can't get served at the VA. And I've gone public on this as well.
You can fix rotten hell. That's all I got to say.
Amen.
You can fix the VA with a. Am I shouting too loud?
No,
I'm getting
you're good.
Passionate?
You're good.
Okay, sorry.
And I love Joe's passion. Just called him because I'm with him. I am tired of it, and that's what brings the disdain. So, Wendy.
And I've said this to audiences and gone on record, but nobody's listening. There is a backlog at the Phoenix VA still because Hal and I use the VA, and we call down there. And Sharon Hellman's voice was still on the greeting a week or two after the story broke, and Hal was telling me this. But here's the deal. You can bring in 20 primary health care providers from northern tier VA facilities to Phoenix tonight on an airplane. Bring them here because they're VA licensed, which is a national certification. You could bring 20 of them here from different VAs, install them at the Phoenix VA to help ameliorate the backlog, and you could do something right now. But that's not being done. Yet we have these immigrants who are hapless in and of themselves being dumped on our doorstep, and all kinds of forces being brought to bear on that problem.
The corruption, $2.6 billion annually in Arizona to educate, medicate, and incarcerate illegal aliens. You're right. It's absolutely sick. I mean, they use our primary health, our emergency rooms as primary health care physicians, get better care than our veterans do. It's absolutely outrageous. I want to jump these other lines. Don, are you still with us, Don? Don.
I'm going to be voting.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Thanks.
I wanted to give her some ideas when she talks to the uninformed and the ignorant who are not really listening to your program. They're busy with their parties, with their sports and other activities. But whenever she's trying to convince them that she's a conservative and hopefully a good Christian conservative, she should incorporate borders, language. English is our language. Culture, not La Raza, not La Mecha, whatever. Borders, language, culture. And she's got to talk about the God, country, and family. And also, of course, the Constitution, the rule of law, and the Constitution, rule of law, and what capitalism is. A lot of people, the ignorant, don't even know what capitalism is versus communism. She's got to educate the ignorant and the uninformed who have no time to listen to your show or read the Washington Times or the National Review or anything conservative.
Well, Don, thanks for calling in because I couldn't agree more. I mean, who was that? I saw a statement the other day that said, the biggest fear isn't the fact that that Obama is our president. The biggest fear are to recognize that we have an electorate out there that would have voted him in the first time, let alone the second time, and do what they're doing to this country. So I couldn't agree more.
Well, and thank you for that coaching because there could be no more stark contrast of a difference between Kyrsten Sinema, the sitting congresswoman, and me, the woman who will replace her. She talks about education. I'm actually a state licensed teacher. She talks about children. I've actually had 2 children. My husband and I have raised 2 children. We have 2 grandchildren. We were just babysitting them this afternoon. She talks about small business and creating an environment for small business to be able to thrive. We have had a small business for 18 years. We meet payroll every 2 weeks. And then she talks about veterans. I'm a fifth-generation veteran, as we discussed earlier, and served 20 years in uniform, as did my husband. So you have a congresswoman right now in the seat who basically cloaked herself as a moderate and got into office by a fairly small margin. Well, people's eyes are being opened. This woman, Kirsten Sinema, helped author the central tenets of Obamacare before she became a congresswoman. And then yet when she was in Congress this past year, she voted with Republicans to delay the individual mandate, and she voted with Republicans to extend the work week. So she flip-flopped by sticking her wet finger up into the air to see which way the wind is blowing. People tell me time and time again, and I'm not talking about just conservatives, I'm talking about people across the spectrum. They say, we may not agree on everything, but we want somebody to go to Congress who's got backbone, who's not going to flip-flop, somebody who has conviction. And you look at someone and how she has led her life all the way up to this point to see the consistency of how that person will vote.
Yeah, and thank you, Dawn. Thanks for those comments, and I agree. We want warriors, people that'll step out and defend those things that America stands for. And like Teddy Roosevelt said in 1907, if you come to America and claim to be anything else but an American, you're not an American. One language, one culture, one America. Anyway, we have Joe, another Joe on the line.
Yeah,
Joe?
right. Thanks. Listen, I'm sorry I missed her name. Got to drum that name in more.
Yep, Wendy Rogers. Wendy
Okay.
Rogers for CD9
and the
Congress.
next thing is she running against Gifford down there in Tucson or no?
No.
Let me explain that.
Yeah.
WendyRogers.org is my website.
Okay.
Martha McSally is a great friend. She's also an Air Force pilot who's running down in Tucson against Ron Barber.
Okay.
And we actually know each other. I get asked this a lot, and she gets asked. She's a little younger than I am. She actually is about, I think, 12 years younger than I am.
Okay.
And flew fighter aircraft in the Air Force.
Uh-huh.
Fighters actually were not available to me. I was one of the first women pilots. So I flew heavy jet transport C-141 aircraft and passenger style aircraft. So
Okay.
I did 20 years and then have been a small business owner for 17, 18 years and have kids and grandkids.
Okay.
And she's running against Kirsten Sinema.
Yeah, Kirsten Sinema is the Democrat.
Listen, you got to run on today, not yesterday. All on today's facts and tomorrow's facts, and also on the energy bills that they're trying to get over. Our bills are $306 a month, and if they keep going, they'll be $706. And he wants to shut all the coal mines. He doesn't want to drill the oil. He doesn't want to do a lot of things. He just wants he wants the immigrants, the illegal immigrants, and we know why he wants that. God bless those people, but he wants them for the votes. There's no question about it.
Everybody knows that. And Joe, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thanks a lot for calling in, because I couldn't agree. And you're right. What are you going to do today? What are you going to do to fix the problem? I want to hear that too. Wendy has expressed some issues and some concerns and her desire to fix some things. I want somebody that's going to go in there and really do something, not talk about it, do something. Anna, you're on the line.
Yes. Good evening, I guess. I want to ask Ms. Rogers. First of all, I want to let you know that I came here from Mexico legally, and I resent people who come here just walking in or crossing without permission of the authorities and then demand benefits that they are not entitled to, and if you don't give them, you're a racist. I personally have been called racist because of my views. I am brown, and I'm small. I look like one of them, but when I came here, I came in through the front door with documents. I feel that if you really want to be in this wonderful country, you have to, number one, come in the right way. Number two, support this country 100%.
Amen. And Anna, we've got a minute left, so let me have Wendy take that. And thanks for calling. And like you, I love those who follow the rule of law, come to America to be Americans. Thank you, Anna, and thank you for being an American and coming the right way.
I took an oath on the Constitution to defend it against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It is a promise that I will uphold, and I honor and respect people who respect the rule of law. I have spent my life to support the rule of law, either in uniform or as a small business owner, to create jobs. And that we need to rally around. And we can hold the United States House of Representatives. We must take the United States Senate so that we can have the checks and balances that we do not see today. WendyRogers.org.
Amen. Amen. WendyRogers.
This was a paid program and was provided for informational purposes only.
How's your son doing? He's going to private school.